The phone rang at exactly 10 p.m., cutting through the silence of my empty living room like a blade. I glanced at the screen, expecting to see Derek's name, but instead saw his number paired with an unfamiliar tension in my chest. He had left his phone on the kitchen counter this morning, rushing out to catch his flight to the Denver conference. I had meant to drop it off at his office, but the day had gotten away from me, consumed by client presentations and back-to-back meetings. I answered, already forming an apology in my mind for not bringing it sooner. But the voice that greeted me wasn't Derek's. "Natalie?" Vanessa's tone dripped with something I couldn't quite name. Satisfaction, maybe. Or anticipation. "Don't wait for your husband at home tonight." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there on my cream-colored sofa, the one Derek and I had picked out together 3 years ago, when we first moved into this craftsman-style house in suburban Portland, staring at the dark screen of my phone. My pulse hammered in my throat, but my mind remained oddly clear, almost detached, as if I were watching this moment happen to someone else. Vanessa, my husband's younger sister, the woman who had smiled at our wedding while whispering to her mother that I wasn't good enough for Derek, the woman who dropped by unannounced, rearranged my kitchen cabinets, and offered unsolicited advice on everything from my career choices to my choice of curtains, the woman who called Derek at least 3 times a day, monopolizing his attention with manufactured emergencies and dramatic retellings of minor inconveniences. I should have felt panic, fear, the crushing weight of betrayal. Instead, I felt something sharper, colder, clarity. My fingers moved with steady purpose as I scrolled through my contacts, past family members, past friends, landing on a name I hadn't called in months. I pressed dial and brought the phone to my ear, listening to the ring with an almost eerie calm that surprised even me. "Natalie?" The voice on the other end sounded alert despite the late hour. "It's been a while. What's going on? I need you to come to my house, now, and bring the papers." My voice didn't waver. "I think it's time." "Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back." I looked around my carefully decorated living room, at the framed photos of Derek and me on various vacations, at the throw pillows I had agonized over selecting, at the life I had built with painstaking care. "I'm sure. How soon can you be here?" 20 minutes? Maybe 25 with traffic. "Perfect. Thank you, Amanda." I ended the call and set my phone on the coffee table, then walked to the kitchen to make tea. My hands remained steady as I filled the kettle, selected a chamomile blend, and arranged cookies on a plate. The normalcy of these actions felt surreal, like I was preparing for a casual visit rather than what I suspected was about to become a defining moment in my marriage. The kettle whistled. I poured hot water over the tea bag, watching the amber color seep through the clear liquid, expanding and deepening. Steam rose in delicate spirals, carrying the scent of chamomile and honey. I added a spoonful of local honey, stirring slowly, methodically, my mind racing through possibilities and probabilities. Derek was supposed to be in Denver for a medical equipment conference. He had left early that morning, kissing my forehead in the pre-dawn darkness, whispering that he would miss me. His suitcase had been packed the night before, sitting by the front door like a patient traveler. I had watched from the bedroom window as he loaded it into his silver Audi, waved, and driven away into the gray morning mist. Or so I had thought. Vanessa's call changed everything. "Don't wait for your husband at home tonight." The words echoed in my mind, gaining weight with each repetition. She had called from his phone, which meant she had access to it, which meant they were together, which meant Derek wasn't in Denver at all. The doorbell rang exactly 23 minutes after my call to Amanda. I opened it to find my attorney standing on the porch, her usually impeccable blonde hair slightly windswept, a leather briefcase gripped in her right hand. Amanda Chen had handled my business contracts for the past 5 years, but I had consulted her about something entirely different 6 months ago. something I had hoped never to need. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Would you like tea?" Amanda's sharp eyes studied my face, searching for signs of distress or second thoughts. Finding neither, she nodded and followed me into the kitchen. "Tell me exactly what happened." I recounted Vanessa's call, while Amanda opened her briefcase and extracted a manila folder, setting it on my kitchen island. The sight of it made my stomach tighten, but I kept my voice steady, factual, as if reporting on someone else's crisis. "And you're certain you want to proceed with this?" Amanda asked when I finished. "Once I'm here in an official capacity, once these papers are on the table, there's no pretending this was just a social visit." "I'm certain." The words came easier than I expected. "I've been certain for 6 months. Tonight just confirmed it." "Then we wait," Amanda said, settling onto one of my bar stools and accepting the cup of tea I offered. "When they arrive, and they will arrive, because Vanessa clearly wants you to know something, we'll have the conversation that needs to happen." We didn't have to wait long. 17 minutes after Amanda's arrival, I heard a car pull into the driveway, then another. Through the front window, I watched Derek's Audi park behind an unfamiliar red Honda Civic. My husband emerged from the driver's seat, his face pale even in the dim porch light. Vanessa climbed out of the passenger side, her dark hair perfectly styled, her lips curved in a smile that made my skin crawl. They walked to my front door together, and through some unspoken agreement, Vanessa reached for the doorbell while Derek hung back, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. She looked like she was arriving at a party she had been planning for months. I opened the door before the chime finished echoing through the house. Vanessa's smile widened when she saw me, her green eyes glittering with triumph. Derek's gaze slid past me, landing on Amanda's figure visible through the kitchen doorway, and what little color remained in his face drained away completely. "Natalie," Vanessa purred, stepping forward as if she owned the place. "We need to talk." "Then come in," I said, my voice carrying none of the emotion churning beneath my carefully maintained composure. "I've been expecting you." The confidence in Vanessa's expression flickered just for a moment before reasserting itself. She swept past me into the living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors I had spent a weekend refinishing last spring. Derek followed more slowly, his eyes darting between me and Amanda like a trapped animal seeking an escape route. "I see you've called your lawyer," Vanessa said, settling onto my sofa with proprietary ease. She crossed her legs and leaned back, her smile never wavering. "How very dramatic of you, Natalie. I suppose you think this gives you some kind of advantage?" "I think," I said quietly, taking a seat in the armchair across from her, while Derek remained standing near the doorway, "that you called me tonight specifically to deliver a message. So, deliver it. Then we'll discuss what happens next." Vanessa's laugh was sharp, cutting. "You always were so controlled, weren't you? So perfectly put together. It must kill you to know that perfect little life you've built is about to crumble." She glanced at Derek, her expression softening in a way that made my stomach turn. "Tell her, Derek. Tell her why you're really here. Tell her about the conference that never existed." Derek's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. He looked at me with something that might have been pleading or guilt or both, and I felt a strange detachment, as if I were observing this scene through thick glass. "He doesn't need to tell me anything," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "I've known about the conference live for 3 days, just like I've known about the Tuesday evening meetings that aren't really meetings, the Saturday mornings at the gym that last 5 hours, the business trips that conveniently coincide with his phone mysteriously dying for days at a time." Vanessa's smile faltered. Derek went rigid. "You see, Vanessa, you've been so focused on playing whatever game you think you're winning that you failed to notice something crucial." I leaned forward slightly, maintaining eye contact with my sister-in-law. "I'm very good at my job precisely because I notice details, patterns, Inconsistencies, and Derek has been leaving a trail of inconsistencies for the past year and a half. Then why didn't you say something? Vanessa demanded, her composure cracking around the edges. Why play the ignorant wife? Because I needed to be sure. Because I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening, and because I needed time to prepare. I gestured toward Amanda, who had been watching this exchange with the focused attention of a hawk tracking prey. Amanda, would you like to explain what we've been working on for the past 6 months? Amanda opened the manila folder, extracting several documents and spreading them across the coffee table with practiced efficiency. These are financial records showing the establishment of separate accounts in Derek's name, funded by withdrawals from your joint accounts, Natalie. These are property records for a condo purchase in Derek's name only, signed 4 months ago. These are credit card statements showing regular charges at restaurants, hotels, and jewelry stores, none of which benefited Natalie. With each document Amanda revealed, Vanessa's expression shifted from triumph to confusion to something approaching fear. Derek remained frozen by the doorway, his face now ashen. And these, Amanda continued, her voice cool and professional, are statements from 3 different witnesses who observed Derek and an unidentified woman at various locations over the past 18 months, witnesses who were prepared to testify in court if necessary, though, interestingly, none of these witnesses identified Vanessa as the woman in question. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched the realization dawn on Vanessa's face, watched her turn to look at Derek with questions forming in her eyes, watched my husband of 7 years struggle to meet anyone's gaze. Derek? Vanessa's voice had lost its confident edge. What is she talking about? What other woman? I think, I said softly, that you've been so busy trying to orchestrate whatever drama you thought would destroy my marriage that you failed to notice your brother was already destroying it on his own, with someone else entirely. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. I had imagined this confrontation countless times over the past 6 months, rehearsed various scenarios, prepared myself for rage or tears or denials, but I hadn't prepared for the savage satisfaction I felt watching Vanessa's carefully constructed scheme collapse around her. Because I had been living with the knowledge of Derek's affair for nearly 3 months. I had found the texts by accident, stumbling across them when his phone had buzzed with a notification while he was in the shower. A message from someone named M, filled with hearts and promises and references to their special place. I had stood in our bedroom, my hands shaking as I scrolled through weeks of correspondence, each message driving a new blade into my heart. But instead of confronting him immediately, instead of dissolving into the hysterical wife role that Vanessa had probably fantasized about, I had done something else entirely. I had become methodical. I had documented everything. I had consulted Amanda. I had prepared. And I had waited. Natalie, please. Derek finally found his voice, stepping away from the doorway. Can we talk about this privately? I think we're well past private conversations, don't you? I kept my tone mild, almost conversational. Besides, your sister seemed so eager to be part of this discussion. It would be rude to exclude her now. Vanessa stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger or embarrassment or both. This is insane. Derek, tell her she's wrong. Tell her there's no one else. Tell her what, Vanessa? Derek's voice came out hoarse, defeated. Tell her another lie? I think we've established I'm quite good at those. But you and I... Vanessa stopped, seeming to realize what she was about to reveal. You and Derek what? I asked, genuine curiosity coloring my voice. This part I hadn't known about, hadn't suspected. What exactly has been going on between the two of you that made you think you had the right to call me tonight with your cryptic little message? Vanessa's jaw tightened. I was trying to help. I've always known you weren't right for Derek. You're cold, distant, more interested in your career than in being a proper wife. I thought if he saw what he was missing, if he spent time with someone who actually appreciated him? Someone like you? The words came out sharper than I intended. I never said that. But her face betrayed her. I just wanted him to see that he had options, that he didn't have to stay trapped in a loveless marriage. So you've been what? Trying to seduce your own brother? Amanda's interjection was clinical, almost curious. It's not like that, Vanessa snapped. I would never. We're not. I just wanted him to see that there were women who would actually care about him, who would put him first instead of prioritizing their careers and their independence and their self-respect, I supplied, their sense of identity outside of being someone's wife. The room fell silent again. Derek had moved to the fireplace mantel, his back to all of us, his shoulders hunched. Vanessa remained standing, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Amanda gathered her documents with quiet efficiency, sliding them back into her briefcase. I think, I said, standing and walking to the window, looking out at the darkened street, that we've all been operating under certain assumptions that need to be corrected. I turned back to face them. Vanessa, you assumed that undermining my marriage would somehow benefit you or your brother. You assumed that orchestrating tonight's little revelation would break me. You assumed wrong on both counts. I moved my gaze to Derek, and you assumed that I was so wrapped up in my own life that I wouldn't notice when you started building a separate life of your own. You assumed that your affair was subtle, that your lies were convincing. You assumed I would fall apart when I found out, that I would beg you to stay, to choose me, to fix what you'd broken. Natalie, Derek began, but I held up a hand. You both assumed I was weaker than I am, that I needed this marriage more than I needed my dignity, that I would accept scraps of loyalty and honesty rather than demand the full respect I deserve. I felt my voice strengthen with each word. But most importantly, you both assumed that this was your story to direct, your drama to orchestrate. You forgot that I'm not a supporting character in your narrative. I'm the author of my own life. I walked to the kitchen island where Amanda had left the manila folder and picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands. These are divorce papers, Derek. I've been carrying them around in my head for 6 months, ever since I started suspecting something was wrong. Amanda drafted them 3 months ago, the day after I found the text from M on your phone. I've been waiting for the right moment to present them to you, but I wanted to be absolutely certain. I wanted to document everything to protect myself legally and financially, and I wanted to see exactly how far you would go with your lies. Derek turned from the mantel, his face stricken. You've known for 3 months, and you never said anything? Would it have mattered if I had? I asked. Would you have stopped seeing her? Would you have been honest? Or would you have just gotten better at hiding it? He had no answer. And Vanessa, I continued, turning my attention back to my sister-in-law, whatever game you thought you were playing tonight, whatever revelation you thought would destroy me, you've accomplished something entirely different. You've shown me exactly who you are. You've confirmed every suspicion I've had about your character, your jealousy, your need to control your brother's life because you can't seem to get your own under control. Vanessa's face went red. You have no right to talk to me like that. I was trying to help Derek see the truth about you. The truth? I let out a short, bitter laugh. The truth is that I've spent 7 years trying to build a partnership with a man who is still tied to his mother's apron strings through you. The truth is that every major decision in our marriage has been influenced by your opinion, your approval, your constant interference. The truth is that I've been patient and accommodating and understanding, hoping that eventually Derek would set boundaries with you. But he never did, and now I understand why. I looked at Derek, really looked at him, seeing past the man I thought I had married to the person he actually was. You never wanted an equal partner. You wanted someone to manage while you lived your double life. You wanted the respectability of a successful wife while pursuing whatever excitement you found with M and you wanted your sister's approval more than you wanted my trust." The words hung in the air, each one landing with the finality of a gavel strike. I had imagined this moment with tears, with screaming, with dramatic confrontations that would provide some cathartic release. Instead, I felt nothing but a cold, clear certainty that this marriage had been dying for far longer than 3 months, or even 18 months. It had been dying since the beginning, suffocated by Derek's inability to cut the umbilical cord to his family of origin and build a true partnership with me. "So here's what happens next," I said, my voice steady and calm. "Amanda will walk Derek through the divorce papers. I've been more than fair in the settlement. Despite having grounds for a fault divorce based on your adultery, I'm not interested in punishing you financially, Derek. I just want to be free of this sham of a marriage. And as for you, Vanessa," I turned to face her directly, "I want you to understand something very clearly. You called me tonight thinking you were delivering a devastating blow. You thought you were breaking me. Instead, you've freed me. You've given me the final push I needed to stop waiting, stop hoping, and start acting. So, in a strange way, I should thank you." Vanessa's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. The triumph she had worn like armor when she arrived had been completely stripped away, leaving her looking small and confused. "But there's one more thing you both need to know," I said, feeling a strange sense of power in this moment. "One more truth that needs to come out tonight." I walked to my purse, hanging on a hook by the kitchen door, and extracted an envelope. Inside were printouts of text messages, time-stamped and dated, between Derek and someone saved in his phone as V. When I found the messages from M, I did a deep dive into Derek's phone. I used a recovery program to retrieve deleted messages, something I'd learned how to do specifically for this purpose, and I found something interesting. I pulled out the papers, spreading them on the coffee table next to Amanda's legal documents. These are messages between Derek and someone with the initial V, messages going back 2 years, messages that are remarkably intimate for a brother and sister. Vanessa's face went white. "You have no right to discover that my husband and his sister have been having an emotional affair? To find out that you've been encouraging him to leave me, feeding him complaints about my supposed inadequacies, positioning yourself as the woman who truly understands him?" I watched her face carefully. "Did you think I wouldn't figure it out?" "That's not what those messages mean," Vanessa said, but her voice had lost all conviction. "Derek and I have always been close. Our family is close. You're twisting everything because you're jealous of our relationship." "Am I?" I picked up one of the printouts. "Let me read you something. V, I wish I had married someone like you instead, someone who gets me the way you do. Natalie is so cold sometimes, so focused on work. You always make me feel appreciated." I looked up at Derek, whose face had gone from pale to green. That was sent on our 5th anniversary, while I was working late to close a deal that would double my income and contribute substantially to our household finances. I picked up another paper. "Or how about this one? I know we can't be together the way I sometimes wish we could, but these lunches with you are the highlight of my week. Don't tell Natalie. Sent 3 years ago, during a time when you told me you were having weekly lunches with a client to discuss a potential partnership." Derek's silence was damning. Vanessa looked like she might be sick. "So you see," I continued, "this isn't just about an affair with some mysterious M. This is about a systematic pattern of emotional betrayal, of prioritizing your sister's feelings over your wife's, of building an inappropriate intimacy that crossed lines long before you ever slept with someone else." "We never," Vanessa started, but I cut her off. "I don't care if you crossed that particular line or not. The emotional betrayal is complete regardless. You've been playing house with your brother while I was the legal wife who paid the bills and maintained the appearance of normalcy." Amanda, who had been quietly observing this entire exchange, finally spoke. "Natalie, I think we've established enough context. Would you like me to proceed with the next phase? I nodded, feeling a weight lifting from my chest. Yes, let's finish this. Amanda extracted another document from her briefcase. Derek, this is a restraining order petition. Based on the emotional manipulation and the evidence of coordination between you and your sister to cause Natalie emotional distress, we're asking the court to keep both of you at least 500 feet away from Natalie and her place of business. You can't be serious. Derek finally found his voice, shock cutting through his earlier defeat. I would never hurt Natalie physically. But you have no problem hurting her emotionally, Amanda replied coolly. And given the evidence of collusion between you and your sister, there's a pattern of harassment that justifies protective measures. This is insane, Vanessa said, her voice rising. You're making us sound like criminals because we care about each other? No, I said quietly. I'm protecting myself from people who have demonstrated they don't care about me at all. People who have lied, manipulated, and betrayed me while pretending to be family. I looked at Derek, really looked at him, and felt nothing but a vague sadness for the years I had wasted. I loved you once, or at least I loved who I thought you were, but that person either never existed or died so long ago that I can't remember when. What's left is someone I don't recognize, someone I don't respect, and someone I don't want in my life anymore. Natalie, please. Derek took a step toward me, and I held up a hand to stop him. Don't. Just don't. There's nothing you can say that will change this outcome. I've made my decision. Amanda has made sure everything is airtight legally. You'll get the condo you already bought, the separate accounts you've been funding, and your freedom to pursue whatever relationship you want with Em or anyone else. I'll keep this house, my business, and my self-respect. What about us? Vanessa demanded, her voice shaking with something between anger and desperation. What about our family? Our parents are going to be devastated. Your parents, I said, feeling a flash of anger for the first time that evening, have enabled this dysfunction for years. They've watched you manipulate Derek, watched you undermine his marriage, and said nothing. They've prioritized keeping you happy over encouraging their son to be a decent husband. So, frankly, Vanessa, I don't care what they think. I'm done managing everyone else's feelings at the expense of my own. The finality in my voice must have registered because Vanessa's face crumpled. Not with sadness, I realized, but with rage. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? So independent and strong? But you're just a cold, calculating woman who cares more about her career than her marriage. If caring about my career means maintaining my independence and self-worth, then yes, I care about my career. I felt my voice steady, calm, despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. But here's what you'll never understand, Vanessa. A real partnership doesn't require one person to sacrifice everything. It doesn't require a wife to make herself small so her husband can feel big. It doesn't require constant reassurance and ego stroking and the abandonment of personal goals. I moved closer to her, maintaining eye contact. You've spent years trying to undermine me because you saw me as competition for Derek's attention. You saw my success as a threat to your influence over him. And you know what? You were right to be threatened, because as long as I was in the picture, there was a chance Derek might grow up, might develop into an actual adult capable of healthy relationships, but you didn't want that. You wanted him dependent on you, looking to you for validation, keeping you as the most important woman in his life? Vanessa's hands trembled at her sides. That's not true. I love my brother. I want what's best for him. No, I said softly, you want what's best for you. And what's best for you is Derek remaining emotionally stunted and dependent, unable to form mature relationships with anyone else. Well, congratulations. You can have him back now. You can resume your unhealthy, codependent relationship without me standing in the way. I turned to Derek, who looked like he might actually be sick. You need to decide what kind of man you want to be. Do you want to spend the rest of your life letting your sister run your relationships? Do you want to keep lying and hiding and building separate lives? Or do you want to actually grow up and learn what real intimacy looks like? Derek started, but I held up my hand again. That's not a question you need to answer tonight, or to me, ever. That's something you need to figure out on your own, but I do need you to sign these papers and leave my house. Amanda had arranged everything on the coffee table. Divorce papers, financial agreements, property division documents. She handed Derek a pen and indicated where he needed to sign. "You're not even going to give me a chance to explain?" Derek asked, the pen shaking in his hand. "To try to fix this?" "Fix what exactly?" I asked. "The 18 months of lying, the emotional affair with your sister, the physical affair with M, the separate life you've been building? Which part of that do you think is fixable, Derek?" He had no answer. Slowly, mechanically, he began signing the documents Amanda indicated. Each signature felt like a step toward freedom, like chains falling away from my wrists. I watched without emotion. This man I had pledged my life to 7 years ago, becoming a stranger with each stroke of the pen. Vanessa watched too, her expression cycling through denial, anger, and something that might have been grief. "This isn't how this was supposed to go," she whispered, almost to herself. "How was it supposed to go, Vanessa?" I asked, genuinely curious. "When you called me tonight, when you told me not to wait for my husband, what did you think would happen? Did you think I would cry? Beg? Fall apart so you could swoop in and comfort your brother while positioning yourself as the real victim in all this?" Her silence was answer enough. "Or maybe," I continued, piecing together the pattern I had been observing for months, "you thought Derek was having an affair with you. Is that it? You thought he was going to leave me for you in whatever twisted way you've rationalized that relationship?" "That's disgusting," Vanessa spat, but her face told a different story. "Is it?" I asked. "Or is it just the logical conclusion of 2 years of emotional intimacy that crossed every appropriate boundary? You've been auditioning for the role of Derek's primary woman for years, Vanessa. The only thing disgusting about it is that Derek let it happen instead of shutting it down." Derek finished signing the last document and set down the pen. His hand shook as he pushed the papers back toward Amanda. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "No," I agreed. "You just never meant to get caught." Amanda collected the signed documents with practiced efficiency, sliding them back into her briefcase. "These need to be filed with the court on Monday morning. The restraining order hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. Until then, Derek, I strongly suggest you maintain distance from Natalie and this property." "Where am I supposed to go?" Derek asked, his voice small. "You have a condo, remember?" I said. "The one you bought 4 months ago with money from our joint account. Or you could stay with M, or with your parents, or in a hotel. Frankly, Derek, that's no longer my problem to solve." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe he had never really looked at me at all, never seen past his own needs and desires to recognize me as a full person with my own thoughts and feelings and boundaries. "I'll get my things," he said quietly. "Just the essentials tonight. Amanda will arrange a time for you to collect the rest with supervision, as per the temporary agreement you just signed." Derek nodded and moved toward the stairs, his footsteps heavy on the wooden treads. The sound of him moving through our bedroom, opening drawers, gathering belongings, felt surreal. This morning we had been married. Tonight we were strangers, dividing property. Vanessa remained in the living room, standing awkwardly by the sofa, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. She looked lost, uncertain, like she had walked into a play expecting to have the starring role, only to find herself relegated to the audience. "You should go," I told her, my voice not unkind. "There's nothing left for you here tonight." "I don't understand," she said, and for the first time, she sounded genuinely confused rather than manipulative. "How are you so calm? Your marriage just ended? Doesn't that mean anything to you?" My marriage ended months ago, I replied. Maybe even years ago. I just didn't want to admit it to myself. Tonight was just making it official. But Derek loves you. I know he does, even if he's made mistakes. I studied her face, looking for signs of genuine belief in what she was saying. Do you really think that? Or is that what you've been telling yourself to justify your behavior? She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I just wanted my brother to be happy. No, I said gently. You wanted your brother to make you happy. You wanted to be the center of his world. And in trying to keep that position, you helped destroy his marriage. I hope it was worth it, Vanessa, because from where I'm standing, you've lost too. Derek isn't going to suddenly see you as his perfect woman. He's just going to see you as the sister who helped blow up his life. Her face crumpled, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the smugness in her voice when she called me, the satisfaction in her expression when she arrived at my door, the years of subtle and not so subtle sabotage of my marriage. My sympathy evaporated. Derek came down the stairs carrying an overnight bag and a garment bag. He paused in the living room doorway, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Regret? Grief? Fear? Natalie, I interrupted. Whatever you're about to say, whatever apology or explanation you're crafting, I don't want to hear it. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Just go. He nodded slowly and moved toward the front door. Vanessa followed, casting one last look back at me, her expression somewhere between hatred and grudging respect. They left together, sister and brother, united in their dysfunction. I watched through the window as they got into Derek's car, as he backed out of the driveway, as they disappeared into the night. Then I closed the curtains and turned to face Amanda, who had been quietly observing the entire exchange. "How do you feel?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "Free," I said finally. "I feel free." Amanda smiled. "Good. That's good. Now we need to discuss next steps. The restraining order hearing, the property division, the financial accounts. There's still work to be done." "I know. But tonight, I think I just want to process what just happened." Amanda nodded, gathering her things. "Call me if you need anything, day or night. You've been incredibly strong tonight, Natalie. Not everyone could have handled that with such composure." After she left, I walked through my house, touching surfaces, straightening objects, reclaiming my space. It felt different already, lighter somehow, as if Derek's presence had been a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying until it was gone. I made myself a fresh cup of tea and sat on the patio, looking up at the stars scattered across the clear night sky. The air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine from my neighbor's garden. An owl hooted in the distance. The world continued its rhythm, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out beneath its vast expanse. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at the screen, expecting to see something from Derek or Vanessa. Instead, it was from my best friend Claire, who I had called earlier in the evening before Vanessa's fateful phone call. "Just checking in. How are you doing? Still on for coffee tomorrow?" I smiled and typed back, "Actually, I have a lot to tell you. Can we make it breakfast instead? I have a feeling I'm going to need more than coffee." "Absolutely. 9 a.m. at Rosemary's? And Nat, whatever happened tonight, I'm proud of you. I can hear it in your voice. You did something you've been needing to do for a long time." Tears stung my eyes, the first ones I had allowed myself all evening. Not tears of sadness or regret, but tears of relief and gratitude for having someone in my life who truly saw me, who supported me without agenda or judgment. "See you at 9. I typed back, "And thank you for everything." I set down my phone and wrapped my hands around my mug, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. Tomorrow, I would deal with the fallout. Tomorrow, I would face the questions and the gossip and the inevitable attempt by Derek's family to paint me as the villain in this story. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of truly rebuilding my life as a single woman. But tonight, I just sat with the quiet, with the freedom, with the knowledge that I had stood up for myself when it mattered most, that I had refused to be manipulated or controlled or diminished, that I had chosen my own dignity over a comfortable lie. The next morning arrived with a brilliance that felt almost aggressive. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom windows, forcing me awake earlier than I would have liked. For a moment, still caught between sleep and waking, I forgot what had happened the night before. Then memory crashed in like a wave, and I lay there processing the strange new reality of my life. I was getting divorced. My husband had been having an affair. His sister had been enabling and encouraging his betrayal. And I had ended it all with a calm certainty that still surprised me. I showered and dressed with deliberate care, choosing a dove-gray sweater and dark jeans that made me feel put together without being overly formal. I studied my reflection in the mirror, looking for signs of the devastation I thought should be written across my face. Instead, I saw someone who looked tired but resolute, sad but not broken. Rosemary's Cafe was bustling when I arrived, filled with the weekend breakfast crowd and the rich aroma of coffee and fresh pastries. Claire had already claimed our usual corner booth, 2 cups of coffee steaming on the table. She stood when she saw me, pulling me into a tight hug that lasted longer than normal. "I've been worried about you all night," she said, releasing me to study my face. "Your text yesterday was cryptic. What happened?" I slid into the booth and wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, gathering my thoughts. Claire had been my friend since college, had stood beside me at my wedding, had listened to me vent about Vanessa's interference countless times over the years. If anyone deserved the full story, it was her. "Derek's been having an affair," I said, the words coming out easier than I expected, "for at least 18 months, maybe longer, and his sister Vanessa has been helping orchestrate the whole thing, or at least trying to." Claire's eyes widened, but she let me talk, interrupting only to ask clarifying questions as I recounted the entire story. Finding the texts, hiring Amanda, documenting everything. Vanessa's call, the confrontation, the divorce papers. "Wait," Claire said when I finished, "so Vanessa thought she was dropping this bomb on you, but you'd already known for months?" 3 months about the affair, 6 months that something was seriously wrong. "And you just let them think you were clueless? That's kind of brilliant, actually." I laughed, surprising myself. I don't know if it was brilliant or just self-protective. I needed time to prepare, emotionally and legally. I needed to make sure I wasn't overreacting, that I wasn't reading too much into things. "Reading too much into your husband having an affair?" Claire's eyebrow arched. "Nat, that's not something you can overreact to." "I know, but I kept thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe I was being paranoid." I took a sip of coffee, feeling its warmth slide down my throat. It wasn't until I found the condo purchase that I knew for certain. That's when I couldn't deny it anymore. "So he bought a whole separate property? Where did he get that kind of money?" "From our joint accounts, mostly, which is part of why the financial settlement is so clean-cut. He essentially used marital funds to finance his affair, which gives me significant leverage." Claire shook her head, her expression mixing disbelief and anger. "I never liked Derek, you know. I know I never said it explicitly, but there was always something off about him, like he was performing the role of good husband without actually being one." Her words struck something deep inside me. That's exactly it. He was performing, and I was so busy trying to be the perfect wife that I didn't notice I was performing too. We were both just playing roles in a marriage that was never really real. "What about Vanessa? What was her deal?" I explained the emotional affair, the inappropriate closeness, the text messages I had found. Claire's face grew increasingly disturbed. "That's seriously messed up. Like, I know families can be close, but there's close, and then there's that. I don't think they were physically involved, I said carefully. At least, I have no evidence of that. But emotionally, they were definitely having an affair of some kind. She was his primary emotional support, his confidant, the person he turned to when he was unhappy with me. That's not normal sibling behavior. No, it's definitely not. Claire paused, choosing her words carefully. Are you okay? I mean, really okay? Because you seem almost too calm about all of this. I considered her question. Was I okay? I think I processed a lot of the grief and anger already during those 3 months when I knew but wasn't saying anything. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I can count. I raged in my car on the way to work. I went through all the stages of grief while still living with him, while still pretending everything was fine. So, by the time last night happened, I was already on the other side of it. That must have been incredibly lonely. The tears came then, sudden and overwhelming. Claire reached across the table and squeezed my hand while I cried quietly into a napkin, trying not to make a scene in the crowded cafe. I'm sorry. I managed between breaths. I thought I was done crying. You don't have to apologize for having feelings, Nat. Your marriage just ended. You're allowed to fall apart a little. But I didn't want to fall apart. I had spent too many years accommodating Derek's needs, managing his moods, making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. Falling apart felt like admitting defeat, like proving Vanessa right about my inadequacies. Tell me I'm doing the right thing, I said, wiping my eyes. Tell me I'm not making a huge mistake. Claire leaned forward, her voice fierce. You are absolutely doing the right thing. Natalie, you've been dying slowly in that marriage for years. I've watched it happen. You've become a shadow of who you were in college, all that fire and ambition and joy beaten down by a man who couldn't appreciate you and a sister-in-law who actively worked to undermine you. I loved him once, I whispered, or I thought I did. Maybe you loved who you hoped he would become, but he never became that person. And you can't keep loving potential forever. Her words settled into me with the weight of truth. I had loved Derek's potential, loved the life I thought we could build together, loved the idea of a partnership more than I had loved the reality of our relationship. What now? I asked. What do I do next? You heal. You rediscover who you are outside of that marriage. You reconnect with the parts of yourself you've been suppressing to keep the peace. Claire smiled. And you let me help you however I can. Over the next 2 hours, we talked through everything. The upcoming restraining order hearing, the logistics of Derek collecting his belongings, how to handle questions from mutual friends and colleagues. Claire offered to be present for any interactions with Derek, to help me go through the house and remove items that carried too many painful memories, to just be there when the loneliness got overwhelming. By the time we left the cafe, I felt steadier, more grounded in my decision. The sun was high and warm, and the street was filled with people going about their normal Saturday routines. Life continued, indifferent to personal catastrophes. My phone buzzed as we walked to our cars, a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You can't just throw away 7 years of marriage because you're having some kind of breakdown. We need to talk. Derek. I showed it to Claire, who scowled. He's using a different phone. Did Amanda say anything about contact restrictions until the hearing? She said no contact at all. This violates the temporary agreement he signed last night. Screenshot it and send it to Amanda. This is evidence of him ignoring legal boundaries. I did as she suggested, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and vindication. Derek couldn't even follow basic instructions for 24 hours. How had I convinced myself for 7 years that this was a partnership? Amanda's response came quickly. Perfect. This helps our case for the restraining order. Do not respond to him under any circumstances. Forward me any additional attempts at contact. Another text came through, this time from Vanessa. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy. Derek is devastated, and it's all your fault. You never deserved him anyway." I showed this one to Claire, too, who laughed darkly. "She's really committed to this narrative where you're the villain. Screenshot that one, too." "I just don't understand her endgame," I said, dutifully taking a screenshot and forwarding it to Amanda. What did she think would happen? That Derek would leave me, and then what? She'd become his girlfriend? They'd live happily ever after in some twisted codependent relationship? Some people don't think that far ahead. They just react emotionally and deal with consequences later. Claire unlocked her car but didn't get in yet. The important thing is that you're out. You've extracted yourself from that toxic dynamic. Don't let them pull you back in with guilt or anger or whatever else they try. I hugged her goodbye, grateful for her steady presence in my life. As I drove home, I thought about Vanessa's text, about her accusation that I had ruined everything. From her perspective, maybe I had. I had destroyed her carefully constructed world where she was the most important woman in Derek's life, where she could control him through emotional manipulation and constant need. But from my perspective, I hadn't ruined anything. I had simply stopped participating in a system that required my own diminishment to function. The house felt different when I entered, emptier somehow, even though very little had physically changed. Derek's absence created a negative space that was almost tangible. I walked through the rooms, noticing small gaps where his things had been, his reading glasses on the end table, his jacket on the coat hook, his shoes by the door. I spent the afternoon methodically going through shared spaces, separating my belongings from his, boxing up items that were clearly his to be collected later. The process was oddly therapeutic, each item sorted and packed, representing another small step toward a new life. By evening, I had filled 6 boxes with Derek's possessions: clothes, books, toiletries, electronics. Looking at them lined up in the guest room, I was struck by how little he had really invested in our shared life. Most of the furniture, the decorations, the thoughtful touches that made a house a home, those were all mine. Derek had been living here more like a guest than a partner. My phone rang just as I was finishing dinner, an unfamiliar number again. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Derek's voice, slurred and emotional in a way I had rarely heard. "Natalie, please. I know I'm not supposed to call, but we need to talk. This is crazy. We can't just throw away 7 years. I made mistakes, I know that, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please, call me back." I forwarded the voicemail to Amanda without responding. Within minutes, she called me. "That's the 3rd violation of the no-contact agreement in less than 24 hours, she said, her voice brisk and professional. "I'm documenting all of this for the restraining order hearing. How are you holding up?" "I'm okay. Tired. But okay. Good. Listen, I want to prepare you for what might happen at the hearing. Derek's lawyer might try to paint you as vindictive or unreasonable. They might argue that the restraining order is excessive given there's no history of physical violence. So, I might not get it? Oh, you'll get it. Especially with this evidence of repeated contact violations and the documentation of emotional manipulation. But I want you to be prepared for them to make you look like the bad guy." "They've been doing that for years," I said, surprised by my own bitterness. "What's a few more days?" After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the patio again, letting the evening air cool my heated thoughts. The reality of what I had done was starting to sink in. I was really getting divorced. My marriage was really over. And despite the sadness that accompanied that realization, I also felt something else. Relief. Claire called around 9 to check in. We talked for an hour about nothing in particular, just the easy conversation of old friends who don't need a reason to connect. When we finally said goodnight, I realized I was smiling, something I hadn't done genuinely in Derek's presence for months, maybe years. I slept better that night than I had in weeks, dreamless and deep. When I woke Sunday morning, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hopeful. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for Wednesday morning at 10. I spent Monday and Tuesday preparing with Amanda, going over my testimony, reviewing the evidence, trying to stay calm despite my nerves. Derek continued to violate the no-contact order, leaving voicemails that ranged from pleading to angry to bizarrely nostalgic about better times in our relationship. Each voicemail felt like a small paper cut, individually insignificant but collectively painful. In one, he talked about our honeymoon in Hawaii, how happy we had been. In another, he accused me of never really loving him, of using him for financial security while I built my career. In yet another, he cried and apologized, promising to change if I would just give him another chance. I listened to each one with a strange detachment, as if hearing about someone else's life. The Derek in these voicemails felt like a stranger, his version of our relationship so at odds with my own experience that I wondered if we had been living in the same marriage at all. Vanessa sent text messages too, escalating in vitriol. She called me every name she could think of, blamed me for destroying Derek's life, threatened to tell everyone what a terrible person I was. I forwarded each message to Amanda without responding, watching the case for the restraining order grow stronger with each violation. Wednesday morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood. I dressed in a navy suit that made me look professional and composed, even though my stomach churned with anxiety. Claire met me at the courthouse, offering moral support and a steadying presence. "You've got this," she said, squeezing my hand as we walked through the metal detectors. "You're doing the right thing, and the judge will see that." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, less dramatic than television had led me to believe. Derek and his lawyer were already seated on one side, Vanessa sitting in the gallery behind them. She glared at me as I entered, her expression venomous. Derek looked worse than I had ever seen him. His suit was wrinkled, his face unshaven, his eyes red-rimmed and shadowed. Part of me felt sorry for him. A larger part reminded myself that this was the consequence of his own choices. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the case file for several minutes before looking up at both parties. "This is a petition for a restraining order, based on allegations of harassment and emotional abuse," she said. "Ms. Chen, you're representing the petitioner?" Amanda stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "And Mr. Harrigan, you're representing the respondent?" Derek's lawyer, a middle-aged man with an expensive suit and dismissive expression, stood. "Yes, Your Honor. And if I may, we believe this petition is completely without merit. This is simply a vindictive attempt by Mrs. Bennett to punish her husband for ending their marriage." I felt my jaw tighten at the blatant lie, but Amanda had warned me this was coming. She stood again, her voice calm and measured. "Your Honor, Mr. Harrigan has the facts reversed. Mrs. Bennett initiated divorce proceedings after discovering her husband's ongoing affair. The restraining order is necessary due to repeated violations of the no-contact agreement Mr. Bennett himself signed, as well as documented evidence of collusion between Mr. Bennett and his sister to emotionally manipulate Mrs. Bennett." The judge looked at Amanda over her reading glasses. "You have evidence of these contact violations?" "Extensive evidence, Your Honor." Amanda presented a folder containing screenshots of texts, transcripts of voicemails, and phone records showing repeated attempts at contact. "Mr. Bennett has contacted Mrs. Bennett at least 15 times since signing the no-contact agreement Saturday night, despite being explicitly told not to do so." Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence, her expression growing increasingly stern. Then she turned to Derek. "Mr. Bennett, is this accurate? Have you been contacting your wife despite agreeing not to?" Derek's lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up a hand. "I asked Mr. Bennett." Derek stood, his voice shaky. "I just wanted to talk to her, Your Honor, to try to work things out. I didn't think it would be a problem to call my own wife." "Your soon-to-be ex-wife," the judge corrected, "who you agreed not to contact. Did you read the document you signed?" "Yes, but—" "And did you understand that no contact means no contact?" "Yes, but I thought in this circumstance—" "You thought wrong." The judge's voice was sharp. "Ms. Chen, please present your full case." Amanda walked me through my testimony methodically. The discovery of the affair, the documentation of financial impropriety, the emotional manipulation orchestrated by Vanessa, the phone call Saturday night that was clearly designed to cause me distress, each piece of evidence stacked on top of the last, building an undeniable picture of a pattern of harassment. Derek's lawyer tried to paint me as cold and calculating, a career-focused woman who neglected her marriage and was now punishing her husband for finding comfort elsewhere. But his arguments felt weak against the mountain of evidence Amanda had assembled. When it was Derek's turn to testify, he tried to explain away the affair as a mistake born of loneliness, to characterize his constant calls and messages as desperate attempts to save our marriage. But under Amanda's cross-examination, he was forced to admit he had been lying for over a year, that he had used marital funds to support his affair, that he had coordinated with his sister to undermine my confidence and self-worth. The coup de grace came when Amanda presented the text messages between Derek and Vanessa, showing their collusion in creating situations designed to make me feel inadequate or excluded. Messages about family gatherings I wasn't told about, conversations about my supposed failings as a wife, plans to gradually isolate me from Derek's family while making me think it was my fault. Vanessa's face went white as these messages were read aloud. The judge's expression grew increasingly disapproving. "Ms. Vanessa Bennett," the judge said, "are you aware that coordinating to emotionally abuse someone could have legal consequences?" Vanessa stood, her voice defensive. "I wasn't abusing anyone. I was just supporting my brother through a difficult marriage. By systematically undermining his wife," the judge's tone was ice, "by creating situations designed to cause her distress, that's not support, Ms. Bennett. That's harassment." After 3 hours of testimony and argument, Judge Morrison made her ruling. "I'm granting the restraining order for a period of 1 year, renewable upon review. Mr. Derek Bennett and Ms. Vanessa Bennett are to maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from Mrs. Natalie Bennett, her home, and her place of business. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and prosecution." She fixed Derek with a stern look. "Mr. Bennett, you made your choices. You don't get to harass your wife into changing her mind about the consequences. The divorce will proceed as filed, and I suggest you spend less time trying to manipulate your way back into her life and more time figuring out how you ended up here in the first place." To Vanessa, she said, "And Ms. Bennett, your behavior toward your sister-in-law has been reprehensible. I suggest you seek professional help to understand appropriate boundaries in relationships. This court is adjourned." The gavel struck, and it was over. I felt something release in my chest, some tension I had been holding for so long that I had forgotten it was there. Claire grabbed my hand and squeezed it hard. Amanda gathered her papers with satisfied efficiency. As we left the courtroom, I caught a glimpse of Derek and Vanessa conferring with his lawyer, all three of them looking defeated. I felt no triumph in their misery, no satisfaction in having won, just relief that it was finally, truly over. Outside the courthouse, Amanda turned to me with a rare smile. "That went about as well as it could have. Judge Morrison doesn't tolerate harassment, and she could see right through their attempts to flip the narrative." "Thank you," I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being, "for everything, for believing me, for taking this seriously, for building such a strong case. You made it easy by being thorough and honest. A lot of my clients want revenge. You just wanted protection and fair treatment. That made all the difference." We discussed next steps. The divorce proceeding would continue, likely uncontested, now given how badly the hearing had gone for Derek. The property division was straightforward, as we had already agreed on terms. Within a few months, the whole thing would be finalized. And then what? I asked. What happens after it's all legally done? Then you get to find out who you are outside of that marriage. And knowing you, Natalie, I think you're going to surprise yourself. Claire took me to lunch after Amanda left, insisting on celebrating the hearing's outcome with good food and better wine. We talked about everything and nothing, carefully avoiding the heaviness of the morning's events. For a few hours, I let myself just be a woman having lunch with her best friend, no longer defined by my failing marriage or my soon-to-be ex-husband's betrayals. That evening, alone in my house that was now truly just mine, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood in the living room, looking at the space with fresh eyes. This was my home now, my sanctuary, a place I could shape according to my own preferences without considering anyone else's opinions or needs. I thought about Vanessa's call that Saturday night, her voice smug and satisfied as she delivered what she thought was devastating news. Don't wait for your husband at home tonight. She had meant to break me, to watch me crumble under the weight of betrayal. Instead, she had freed me, given me the final push I needed to stop waiting and start acting. In a strange way, I owed her gratitude. Without that call, I might have waited longer, might have talked myself into giving Derek more chances, might have convinced myself that I was overreacting or being too harsh. But Vanessa's cruel satisfaction had crystallized everything, had shown me exactly who these people were and what they thought of me. And I had responded not with tears or hysterics or the breakdown they expected, but with calm, methodical action. I had protected myself, legally and emotionally. I had refused to play the role of wounded wife they had written for me. As I sat there in the gathering darkness, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride in myself, not the performative pride of achieving professional goals or maintaining a perfect home, but genuine pride in having stood up for my own worth when it would have been easier to accept mistreatment. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "How are you doing? Need company?" I smiled and typed back, "I'm actually doing okay, just sitting here, appreciating my own resilience. That's my Nat. The woman I knew in college is back." Was she? Was I really back? Or was I someone new entirely? Maybe I was both. The person I used to be before Derek and Vanessa tried to reshape me, combined with the strength I had developed through surviving their attempts. Over the following weeks, my life developed a new rhythm. Work became a joy again, rather than an escape. I threw myself into projects with renewed energy, took on new clients, started planning the business expansion I had been putting off for years. My colleagues noticed the change in me, commented on how much lighter I seemed. Claire helped me redecorate the house, purging items that carried too many memories of Derek. We painted the bedroom a soft sage green instead of the beige Derek had preferred. We replaced furniture, hung new art, brought in plants that added life and color. The house transformed into a space that felt authentically mine. I joined a book club, started taking yoga classes, reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. Each new activity felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I had set aside to make room for Derek and his needs. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in April, exactly 6 months after Vanessa's fateful phone call. I sat in the courtroom with Amanda, listening to the judge pronounce the dissolution of my marriage with administrative efficiency. Derek wasn't there, having waived his right to appear after the restraining order hearing. It felt anticlimactic, this legal ending to 7 years of my life. But afterward, standing outside the courthouse in the spring sunshine, I felt something shift inside me. The weight I had been carrying was gone. The fear that I had made a mistake was gone. In its place was a quiet certainty that I had done exactly what I needed to do. "How does it feel to be officially single again?" Amanda asked, her professional demeanor softening into genuine warmth. "Honestly, it feels like I can breathe properly for the first time in years." That evening, Claire threw me a small celebration dinner with a handful of close friends. We toasted to new beginnings, to resilience, to the courage it takes to choose yourself when everyone else wants you to choose them. The wine flowed freely, the laughter came easily, and I felt surrounded by genuine love and support in a way I never had in my marriage. Around midnight, after everyone had left, I sat on my patio under the stars, thinking about everything that had happened. Vanessa had meant to destroy me that Saturday night. She had thought she was delivering the final blow to a woman she saw as weak and dependent. Instead, she had given me a gift, though she would never understand that. She had forced my hand. She had pushed me to take action I had been postponing. She had revealed so clearly who she and Derek were that I could no longer lie to myself about the viability of my marriage. And in trying to break me, she had inadvertently revealed her own brokenness. Her obsessive need to control Derek's relationships, her inability to recognize appropriate boundaries, her fundamental misunderstanding of what strength looked like. I thought about Derek too, about the man I had married and the man he had become, or perhaps had always been. His inability to stand up to his sister, his willingness to lie for 18 months rather than have an honest conversation, his choice to build a secret life rather than work on our marriage or end it honestly. I felt sorry for him, in a distant way. Sorry that he would likely never develop the emotional maturity needed for a healthy relationship. Sorry that he would probably remain entangled with Vanessa's dysfunction for the rest of his life. Sorry that he had chosen comfort over growth, lies over truth, manipulation over authentic connection. But mostly, I felt grateful. Grateful that I had discovered the truth before wasting more years. Grateful for Amanda's legal expertise and Claire's unwavering support. Grateful for the strength I had found in myself when I needed it most. Months passed, then a year. My business thrived, growing beyond anything I had imagined during my marriage when I had kept myself small to avoid threatening Derek's ego. I hired 2 employees, opened a second office, won several major contracts. Each success felt sweeter, knowing it was mine alone, not diluted by someone else's resentment or need for control. I dated occasionally, testing the waters of relationships with the wisdom of someone who had survived a failed marriage. I was more careful now, more aware of red flags, more willing to walk away when something didn't feel right. But I was also more open, more authentic, freed from the performance of perfection I had maintained for Derek. I never saw Derek or Vanessa again, though I heard things through the grapevine occasionally. Derek had moved to Seattle with his mystery woman M, whose name turned out to be Madison. Their relationship apparently ended within a year, and he moved back to Portland, living alone in the condo he had bought with our marital funds. Vanessa had gotten into therapy, allegedly, though reports on whether she was actually changing varied depending on who you asked. I felt nothing when I heard these updates. No satisfaction, no vindication, no lingering hurt. They were simply people I used to know, characters in a story that was no longer mine to tell. 2 years after the divorce, I met someone new. His name was Marcus, a high school teacher with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor. He had been divorced too, understood the caution I brought to new relationships, never pushed me to move faster than I was comfortable with. Our relationship developed slowly, naturally, built on honest communication and mutual respect rather than performance and pretense. One evening, over dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, Marcus asked me about my ex-husband. It was the first time he had brought up the subject directly, though he knew I was divorced. "What happened?" he asked gently. If you want to talk about it. I considered how to answer, how to condense that complicated story into something comprehensible. He wasn't who I thought he was, or maybe I wasn't who he wanted me to be. Either way, we weren't good for each other. Was it hard? The divorce? Parts of it, I admitted. But honestly, the hardest part was admitting I had stayed too long in something that wasn't working. Once I accepted that, everything else was just logistics. Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. I'm glad you got out. I'm glad you found the strength to choose yourself. Me too, I said, meaning it completely. Later that night, lying in bed unable to sleep, I thought about Vanessa's call one more time. The moment that had changed everything. Don't wait for your husband at home tonight. She had meant it as a weapon, but it had become a catalyst, because I had stopped waiting. Not just that night, but in every way. I stopped waiting for Derek to prioritize our marriage. I stopped waiting for Vanessa to accept me. I stopped waiting for other people's approval or validation or permission to live my life on my own terms. I had made one phone call that night to Amanda, and it had set in motion a chain of events that transformed my entire existence, not because I was vindictive or because I wanted revenge, but because I had finally valued myself enough to demand better treatment. Vanessa had promised she would remember what happened that night for the rest of her life. I suspected she did, though not in the way she had imagined. She probably told herself a story where I was the villain, where I had overreacted, where I had destroyed a family out of pride or spite. She probably couldn't comprehend that her cruelty had backfired so completely, but I remembered it too, as the night I stopped being a victim of other people's dysfunction and started being the author of my own story. The night I chose dignity over comfort, truth over lies, my own worth over the approval of people who had never valued me anyway. And in the end, that was what she would remember for the rest of her life, whether she acknowledged it or not, that she had pushed someone she thought was weak and discovered instead that they were strong, that she had tried to break someone and watched them rebuild themselves into something better. I fell asleep that night with a smile on my face, grateful for the journey that had brought me here, to this moment of peace and authenticity and hard-won happiness. The call that was meant to destroy me had instead set me free. And that, I thought, was a kind of poetic justice that no courtroom could ever deliver. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Vanessa had never made that call. Would I have continued living in denial, convinced that if I just tried harder, loved better, made myself smaller, I could fix what was fundamentally broken? Would I have wasted another 7 years or more, slowly eroding into a shadow of myself while Derek built his secret life and Vanessa pulled the strings? The truth is, I probably would have. I had invested so much in that marriage, in the image of who I thought we were, that I might have kept investing until there was nothing left of me to give. Vanessa's cruelty had inadvertently been the kindest thing anyone had done for me in years, forcing me to confront what I had been avoiding, pushing me to choose myself when I had been choosing everyone else. I learned something profound through that experience, that strength isn't about never breaking down, never feeling pain, never making mistakes. Strength is about recognizing when something is destroying you and having the courage to walk away, even when everyone tells you that you should stay, that you should try harder, that you should forgive and forget and diminish yourself a little more. I learned that family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes it's the friend who shows up at a divorce hearing, the lawyer who believes your story, the neighbor who brings you soup when you're too devastated to cook, the stranger at a yoga class who becomes a confidant. Family is the people who see you truly and love you anyway, who support your growth rather than demand your smallness. And I learned that closure doesn't always come with apologies or understanding from the people who hurt you. Sometimes it comes from your own decision to stop waiting for them to acknowledge what they did wrong, to stop needing their validation, to write your own ending to the story they tried to control.